Welcome to another Bandology interview. Bandology is a Canadian nonprofit dedicated to more music for more kids via education, collaboration, and community.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucas Redwood and I am the music manager with Bandology. I'm here with Calvin Beale. How are you doing today, Calvin?
Good. How you doing, Lucas?
Good. Thanks for, a long time no see. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for asking me to be here.
Calvin is a freelance musician and is a graduate from the music program at Humber College. So Calvin, when did you first start playing music?
Well, if that's kind of a compartmentalized answer, but I'd say bass, which is my primary instrument. I started at about 12 is when I started playing. But before that, I come from a musical family. So my father's a drummer and he plays pretty much everything. So we always had musical instruments around the house. So I think some of the first shots of me ever doing anything was like behind the drum set, goofing around, and he'd teach me paradiddles and stuff like that.
Nice.
Like 5 years old, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Cool.
A while.
And after Humber, were there any difficulties during the start of your career after you graduated, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think I was kind of fortunate that I did my teen years in Thunder Bay, which is in Northern Ontario, and I managed to get in with a country band when I was very, very young. And that experience sort of informs my playing into college. So when I arrived at college, I had already spent a lot of time playing like 3 nights a week all the way through high school. And so when I got to Humber, certain things that you may not necessarily do until you're in your 20s, I kind of got to take care of when I was younger. So to answer that question about difficulties, I wouldn't necessarily say there were difficulties other than the fact that, the hard thing for everybody is to figure out, okay, I can play music. Now, how do I convince people to use me, right? So that was a bit of a head scratcher. But to answer that portion of it, it really came down to, you got to find out where people are playing. So where the jam sessions are happening, if there's like different studios that sort of use live musicians a lot. And then just wherever you have bands where people play that you enjoy the music, you got to go hang out as an audience member for a while, go for a couple weeks, then introduce yourself as a player, find out where they hang out, and then try and pop up in those places. And eventually you kind of get into a position where they either let you on stage with them or you're at a jam session and you get to play in front of people. And then one day, for me, bass player, all the bass players that were usually being used weren't available. And then they were like, well, that guy's always around. Let's take a chance on him. He sounds good. And it just sort of, you just do good and keep doing good. And then eventually something becomes a once in a while conversation, and a once in a while call becomes a steady gig, and that leads to another gig. You know what I mean? So you just basically got to stick with it. It feels like forever. And then once you're doing it, you're like, oh, I've made it. It's that kind of feel.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I definitely agree. I think jam sessions are a totally good way to meet new people and connect with different people, which leads to different opportunities, like you said.
Yeah.
So you've also had the opportunity to perform with several musicians on television appearances, such as MTV and CTV. That's really cool. Can you describe a bit about your experience with how you got those opportunities and what it was like to experience them?
Yeah, so most of my career, if I was to define like what is my career in a nutshell, I'd say I'm more of a sideman and a session guy. So I tend to either join bands as a member or I get called for events. You know what I mean? So some of these TV things were more like one-off situations. A couple of them, there was a TV show on CBC, which was more of a battle of the bands kind of style thing, where like they just had different bands put together, and every week there was an elimination process. It's like The Voice or anything like that. It was a few years ago, and I just got a call to do that gig. Another really amazing bass player named Rich Brown, he originally wasn't available for the gig, so then I got a call for it. And a lot of my work comes from if Rich Brown's not available or a couple other guys are busy, you know, you're in that pool. So your name comes up either first or second or third, somewhere in there. So I got one of those opportunities based on word of mouth and previous experiences other people had with me. So I think that's a major point is you kind of live on your reputation, which is very important. That, like, you know, everybody sort of assumes that you can play. That's the minimum thing, you know, like the playing is assumed. Everybody can play. If you're going to be on a gig, you got to be able to cut the gig. But after that, it's how prepared are people? You know, are you easy to deal with? You know, are you an enjoyable human being? You know, do you genuine, like in general, do you look good? Do you care about your appearance? Little things like that. Do you show up appropriate to the gig? If it's a suit gig, do you show up in jeans and a t-shirt, or vice versa? So attention to those kind of details is what people remember when they go, okay, well, are we going to use this guy or are we going to use this guy? You know, so, and sometimes you don't necessarily even need to be the best player. You just got to be the person that kind of cares a little bit more, and that will get you more consistent work. So for the television side of things, most of it is word of mouth and reputation. And yeah, I'd say that's probably the best way to put it.
Cool. Yeah, that's good advice. So throughout the COVID pandemic, how have you adapted as a musician?
Constantly adapting. I wish it was as simple as, oh, we're in COVID, so that means you do it this way. But it always feels like the needle's been moving a little bit. And I think there's a certain element of sort of fatigue in that, because we're all, you know, as musicians, we kind of have this catch-22 sort of situation, in that, like, most of us didn't get into music thinking like, oh, the main purpose of doing this is I want to make money. The main purpose of anybody who wants to do music is I want to make music. I want to play. I want to, you know, I want to do the thing I'm good at and that I'm passionate about, right? So I think it's been really hard on a lot of people that are used to working all the time, such as myself, sort of adapting to the fact that, like, things look like they're going to happen and then they're not happening, and then they look like they're going to happen and they're not happening. But for me, a major sort of shift is like, I never really did a lot of sessions from home, but through the pandemic, I started getting called from producers going like, hey, no one can come to the studio. How's your home studio set up? So I managed to pivot to doing a lot of work from home, and I managed to figure out how to get like a really good sound, good quality sound. And then with working with producers, really quickly kind of figured out what they wanted as far as, you know, when I send them things, what's the best way to do these recordings. And yeah, so I sort of developed a whole new sort of skill set at home, got to know my home recording situation a lot better, got to know Logic a lot better. And all this to say is, you know, when adversity happens, and it's going to happen to all of us, you can sort of turtle, or you can look at it and go like, okay, it's happening. What can I do to treat this as an opportunity rather than just something that's happening to me, right? So I'd say studio work is from home has been the biggest change. And then, you know, just trying not to freak out when things, you know, gigs get started and then things get canceled because all of a sudden we have a pop-up in COVID. So you just got to ride it out. There's a light to the end of this tunnel. There will be. In life, it always is. And as long as you kind of keep that in your head, then at a certain point, we'll all be able to maybe not get back to exactly what it was, but we get to move forward and create, hopefully, maybe even something better. Who knows? We're just gonna have to see how it goes, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. And as things are starting to open up, do you have any exciting events or projects in the works right now?
Well, at the time of this recording, we're about 2 weeks away from restrictions being sort of lifted in Ontario. Well, I don't want to say fully, but like to a point where I think organizers of festivals and venues and stuff like that are going to start feeling a little more comfortable opening things up. In the far-flung, definitely starting in the sort of June into the rest of the year side. I've got a lot of festival dates with like, there's a country artist I play with named Johnny Reid. There's a girl named Elise LeGros. I've been subbing in with an artist named Serena Ryder. I did a little bit of stuff with her last year, and her bass player is amazing. And he's a little busy at stuff as well. So good chance I'll be doing a little bit of stuff with them as well. And then just I have a couple international artists I kind of work with. There's a guy named Farmars Aslani who I've done some work with, who is more of a Persian artist, and Babak Amini. And then, yeah, so at this point, everything's sort of just getting to the point where it's going to go crazy, and there's going to be like 1,000 calls. And then the flip side is okay, everything starts getting busy again. Holy cow, now what do we do? Because, you know, everybody's going to want the same dates. So for you new guys that are in the industry who are just trying to break into things, just a little bit of a tip. Like usually from about May until September, October, that's when the music industry is the busiest. That's where all the guys in your hometown that are doing other stuff are going to be the busiest. So you need to use the time leading up to May to really get your stuff together and make your contacts and make yourself available, because the point where people are going to need you is when things are busiest. And that's during, you know, sort of that summer period. So, you know, it's a good sort of point to go like, by May, I need to meet another 5 people. I need to introduce myself to a couple more people. Make yourself a little list. I need to meet some people. I need to learn some more songs. If there's a band you really like and want to play with, you know, what songs do they do? How do they do that? Do they have arrangements? You know, little things like that. If you can be proactive and show people that you're willing to do the work, even when there's no money on the line, eventually when there's money on the line, good chance it's coming to you, because they know they can count on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any favorite moments or performances you have experienced so far in your career? I know there might be a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been asked that kind of question before, and it's a tough one, because like I think one of the things I love most about music, and that sort of encapsulates that question, is every day is an adventure, which I think is a beautiful thing about music. Like when you get into this industry, especially in Canada, like the chances of you doing the same band day in and day out all the time and making like a substantial living, it's a little tough. But in Canada, you get lucky to play multiple styles and do a whole bunch of different things. So, I mean, favorites, I mean, I managed to go to Australia and do a bunch of dates over 2 weeks with a Persian band, and like literally flew out, did my stuff, came back to a session, and that kind of thing where you get to meet people in a whirlwind and get jet lag. I mean, I love that. That's amazing. Or I got to tour through Europe with a psychedelic rock band, and that was really interesting, because every day we were in a different city. Sometimes we were, you know, like 3 days, 3 different countries on like a beautiful tour bus. Got to like meet people from all over the world. I played 1990, like when 99 turned into 2000, the millennium. I did that in India. I was on the edge of the Arabian Sea, watching the first sunrise of the new millennium coming over the Arabian Sea, you know, like all these great things, you know. Touring with Johnny Reid was amazing, you know, playing to big crowds in Newfoundland, and like just the ability to, like, you know, you go over to your side of the stage and there's 14,000 people and you go, yeah, like this. And then you just hear this sound of like just a crowd roaring back at you after you give them the signal to, you yell at them, they all yell it back at you, and your hair is flying. Not that I got much hair left, but like your hair is flying back. Like those kind of moments are just amazing, you know? So there's too many to tell, you know, like this could be a whole interview of just road stories, you know? So yeah, but it's been a great life so far. Like I love music, and I've been really blessed to be able to play a lot with a lot of great players. So.
Yeah, I've been on the audience side of that, and I would love to one day be on the music side of those kind of performances where, you know, the crowd is so big and energetic. It'd be awesome.
Well, I have no doubts. I have no doubts you will be. You know, like just as a personal aside to anybody watching, like Luke is great player. And like honestly, I'm sure we're gonna end up on a gig at some point in the future. And it's going to be really, really good to be able to sit there and groove with you. I have no doubts. So.
Yeah, thanks, Calvin. All right, so just a couple more questions. Why would you say music education is important to you?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. I do some college teaching. There's also a prep school that you're familiar with called Miriam School of Music. And that's sort of, they run the gamut as far as their ages, but I've been involved with a thing called All-Star Band, which is a little more of a jazz focused. We take kind of like the players that show a little more aptitude, they're a little younger, and we sort of try and groom them up through their early teens into their later teens years, and you know, open them up and open up their playing. And all that to be said, I think it's a bit of a responsibility to sort of, you know, usher in the next generation of players, you know, and it's also a great way to communicate with younger people. And sometimes, you know, like you meet kids that are kind of from a maybe not the best situation, who are maybe a little closed off and aren't used to communicating or don't have good relationships with adults. And music in itself is a form of communication, and the fact that you can sort of use music as a way to really connect in a way that maybe words can't with kids, and help them find their own voice, and then also help them find something that they're good at. That I know being good at playing bass when I was a teenager gave me a lot of armor, because like, you know, in high school, you know, kids can be a little thoughtless and sometimes even cruel in the things they say. And I can remember like being teased in my high school years and like just whatever. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm good at. You can't knock me down because I know what I'm good at already. You know, so it's important to really help not only the next generation of musicians, but just the next generation of people. And I think if you can connect with somebody musically, that is very, very important. And it's kind of a responsibility. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Calvin. So I know you said a lot of great things about some great advice for younger students. Is there any last minute advice you would give to younger students that might be interested in pursuing a career in music?
It's, I guess, just understand that you know, the work you put in now is going to make life that much easier later. You know, the more you put those hours in now as a player, practicing in your room, shedding, getting good at stuff, always trying to learn more, that makes your ability to actually do things later come a lot easier and seem a lot more effortless. And then just the reality that like even if you're good at music, there are aspects of this stuff that will be frustrating at times, and that's just the way it is. Like you know, some people are really great at music, but they're not necessarily so good on the social side of things. And the faster you can kind of recognize the things that you may not be as comfortable with and address those right away, and try and always push to get those things together, the better things are going to be for you in the end, because we all have holes in our game. We all have things that we're not great at. And those are the things you need to work on. If you're a slaying guitar player that can play any lick, but you can't talk to anybody, chances are you're going to have a hard time getting a gig. So I would suggest just stay vulnerable, allow yourself to kind of start talking to people and do that. And vice versa, if you're a good talker, but you don't practice very much, I think we know the answer to that one right there. You know what you got to do, right? So yeah, always look to see where your weaknesses are and do your best to, you know, maybe even turn those into your strengths. A lot of people have done that in their careers, where they're known in the first part of their career as, that guy isn't so much this. And then they put the work in and everybody goes, yeah, that thing he wasn't really good at, he stands out compared to everybody else, you know? So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we like to end off our interviews with a little set of fast 5 questions.
Oh, okay.
All right, here we go. First question. What is your favorite movie soundtrack?
Okay, you are nowhere near the age that you would know what I'm talking about. I hope you even know who Robin Williams is, but there was a movie called Toys, and it's starring Robin Williams. It wasn't a big movie, but holy cow, amazing soundtrack. I really highly suggest you check that thing out. So,
what genre is it?
So it's a little of everything.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of curated from a whole bunch of different sort of styles. There's some classical in there.
Oh, cool.
There's even some Enya, some Seal. Like it's got a lot of influences in it, but for some reason it does have a bit of a theme through the whole thing. So once you listen to the whole thing back to back, you kind of catch the whole vibe of it. So
nice.
It's great background music. So
cool. How about instrument you wish you played?
I would have loved to have just automatically been good at trumpet, because it always seems to me like those guys and girls are just like, there's a whole thing with that it just seems like the hardest, most ridiculous thing. And if I could immediately have been good at that, or could have put an alternate universe in where I put the time into that and come out good on the other side, it always seems like those guys are just a little extra good as far as musicians in general, because of the amount of work they have to put in to get a good tone and do anything relevant. Like it's crazy. So
yeah, I agree there. How about hidden talent?
Gosh, I don't know. It's funny. I don't know. I think the best thing I could come up with is I can do a handstand for 6 minutes without passing out. That's probably the biggest claim to fame I got at the moment. So
I'm not gonna make you demonstrate that.
Please don't.
Sure, yeah.
I'm pretty sure 6 minutes and 2 seconds, and I'm probably on my head. So
nice. That's wicked. Dream vacation spot.
If I could go anywhere that I haven't been, I'll put it that way, because I think I've seen enough of the world at this point that like I've really knocked a lot off my bucket list for free on somebody else's dime, which is nice through music, which is another good thing about music. You get to travel if you're lucky. But let's just call it 2 places that I really wish I could go. Brazil and Japan are still on my bucket list, and I haven't been there. So yeah, that would be amazing.
Nice. And last but not least, what is your favorite concert you attended?
Oof. Okay. That is a horrible question, because I'm sure we all have about 10 or 20 of those things. I'll tell you about one of my favorite concerts I've ever seen. Larnell Lewis with Snarky Puppy in a little club downtown. We all know it. He got a call last minute, and their drummer couldn't make it across the border for whatever reason. There was some kind of snag up, maybe for his passport, and Larnell kind of had 24 hours to pull it off. And so everybody and their brother and mother came down to see how that would go, because it's not the easiest stuff. And he slayed it. And honestly, that was probably one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. So I'm gonna put that in one of my top 3 things I've ever seen. So
Larnell.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? He's just
so awesome.
He's such a good guy on top of it. One of the
Yeah.
nicest human beings you're ever going to meet. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Calvin, for taking the time today, sharing a bit about your career pathway, and it's nice to catch up with you again.
You too. Hopefully, we'll be looking back at this in a year, talking in between sets on some kind of gig. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be. All right. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks for joining us. If you like what you heard, you can learn more about our organization at bandology.ca, which features information about music education, advocacy and research, and our Play a Gig and Bandcamp programs. Follow us on social media for more videos, performance, and interviews on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.